Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Renee Moelders. I'm a partner with Convergence Coaching, and I'm very excited to be here today for our HR Huddle, our first HR Huddle of August. And it's super hot here in Massachusetts, summer weather to the max. I think pretty much summer weather all over the country to the max. You're probably experiencing it too. So I hope you're enjoying your summer, and we're certainly excited that you are here with us today live. And we have a special guest today. Jennifer Wilson and Tamara Lorzell were not available, so they asked me to host. And I invited a friend of mine and a former coachee and a client, and that is Staci. And so, Staci, I'm going to have you introduce yourself to our audience and say your last name for me, and also say your title and a little bit of information about your firm.
Yeah, so hi everybody. My name is Staci. Engelbrecht is the last name, and nobody can ever pronounce it, so that's totally okay. I am from Vesta. We are a firm in Wisconsin, and we have a couple offices around Southeast Wisconsin. I am the firm's operations manager, and that title or that role sits at the intersection of our operations team, including our client service staff and our marketing. So I supervise both departments here with the firm, and I've been here for, I think this is going to be my eighth tax season. So
Awesome. So, Staci, you have been doing some really wonderful favors for me lately. You've been talking to other clients and coaches of mine. And usually, what I send people to you about is this one firm initiative that your firm went through. And so, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that initiative and then also how that kind of rolls over to you in operations.
yeah, it one firm was something we started probably about 6 years ago, 5, 6 years ago. It really started with just an idea and kind of a dream of how cool it would be for each of our offices to function the same. And when we took a step back, we saw we really had five individual practices almost that were doing their own thing, very inconsistent in the roles and the duties, inconsistent in what was delivered to the client. And we had to take that step back and just say, how can we appear as one? And it, like I said, it started really small, but once we started getting into it, it really made sense and made us realize not only the talent we had in the firm, but the capacity we had in the firm and how we can shift some things around to really make ourselves one. And ultimately, like I said, it impacts the clients that they're now getting the same product no matter where they're going in our firm.
Yeah, and talk a little bit about operations because you and I think you call them the administrative team, are managing all the administrative requests and billing and all these things. And so, how did that start to come into that one firm initiative?
Yeah, when we looked at how we could have everybody functioning as one, it really became clear that it needed to start in our operations team. The client service administrators is the title they had at the time. They really were running the offices. They're facilitating the work. They're the first to see the client. They're the last to see the client. We had some of the operation staff doing due date monitoring. Some were doing e-filing. Um, we kind of just saw that that was the place that we really needed to start and get everything the same before we could move forward with the rest of our departments. So we initially got that whole team together, which super lucky to have such a great team that were wanted to do this and saw it as a challenge and something fun. But we just started with saying, show me everything you do. Show me exactly how. What do you do? And then we picked the best of the best. We liked this procedure over this procedure. So now we're all going to do it this way. And it started very small, but it steamrolled very quickly. And before you knew it, every operations office or every operations person started doing things the same. And one of the things that came from that was we were now able to, and this sounds really small, but this was a really big deal. We were able to answer the phone for each other. So no matter what office you were in, you could answer the phone and you were able to help a client. And we saw that as like a huge step, but everybody got really excited about it because then it was, well, what else can we do to help each other? We started looking at things that were virtual. Can we centralize, for lack of better words, some of those things, and do those things the same. So once everybody got on the same page, it's like I said, it's steamroll.
Yeah, and I feel like as you and I have talked about this over the years, that it's allowed you to cover for each other, but also
Mhm.
develop areas of specialty. Like
Yeah,
we're going to have centralized functions. Not everybody's going to do everything anymore.
correct. And I mean, we also found out some things aren't meant to be centralized, and we tried, and it was clear that some things weren't. But by centralizing some of those things, like you said, e-filing, we didn't have 5 people spending an hour a day. We had 2 people spending an hour a day. And all of a sudden there was capacity on a different end. And what we've seen now, 5, 6 years down the road, is our operations team now has the ability to take on specialties. So one of our operations team members, she has a technology bend, so she helps out the tech department. One has a bend to help out HR, one has a bend to help out marketing. And when that started to happen, then we kind of moved into this other area where we had to structure the roles and say, what does each title mean and what does that person do? And we saw some people who really were superstars that, became really efficient. And those people started taking that bend to other departments, which then, again, kind of rolls into each other, that we saw different capacity from our tax team, our relationship managers. We started pulling tasks off of them that could be done operational.
Like, for instance, what are some examples?
A lot of report monitoring and communications, I think, would be the big two. A lot of our relationship managers, as we'd approach a deadline, they would be calling, this client and that client, trying to get work in. And once we were able to do everything the same and have the same cutoff dates, we realized our operations staff could do that in bulk. So they created templates. They all send out a communication at the exact same time. That's no longer on the relationship manager to have to do. They do provide feedback as to which clients to call, but they can focus on doing the tax returns and not necessarily making the phone calls. Um, Same thing with a lot of missing information. Our operations team heads that up with feedback from the relationship managers. So anything that appeared as clerical that the relationship managers were doing, we tried to pull inside of operations.
Yes, and it sounds like, Staci, by the way, that it's become a much more tech forward process. Like I'm imagining
Mhm.
from all different kinds of lists and have different approaches to it. And maybe they weren't leveraging technology as much as you and your group are able to do now. Is that fair?
Yeah, that is definitely fair. Vesta is a very tech forward team. We have a great CTO who's always on the lookout for different softwares and different things that can help us out. And one thing she's a big advocate of is Teams. So we use that very heavily to post reports, get communication without having to interrupt. We're able to download things from there and then send them out to the clients. We were also able to leverage some other apps inside Microsoft, such as Forms, to send links out to clients that they could fill information in. And then we get that in spreadsheet form so that we can facilitate things, again, without our relationship managers having to call and get information from the client.
One thing that I'm wondering about as you're like sharing about this, Staci, is the getting the buy-in from the relationship managers. What was that tough? Was that difficult to get them to let go and delegate to your team?
Some, I think more so in the beginning, it seemed different for the operations team to do that. I think going way back, there was almost an assumption that the operations team were clerical people, and they answered the phone, they greeted the clients. But what we realized and what really changed people's mind is our operations team has a very, very unique skill set. They're almost project managers. They're in the weeds. They do the details. They can spot something coming down the pike that others necessarily can't. So, two very different frames of mind, and allowing that operations team to do what they do and not having to burden the CRMs to do things that they don't like to do. um, Again, after a while, it developed that they realized they had a lot more free time, and everybody just embraced it. And we were lucky enough that our firm is so tech forward from the leadership down. Everybody was all in on this, and we want everybody at their highest and best use. And this definitely made it happen.
Sure. Well, and the other thing that you're making me think of is that, you're building on those successes. So like really showing people what the team is capable of. And then also, Staci, focusing on that operations skill set. It is a skill set and a competency. I think we used to think about that was just like, it was clerical work or something you called it, or secretarial work, but realizing that we can hire people who are super organized and systematized and tech savvy, and they can come in and look at what we do on the client service side and say, why do you do it that way? How can we smooth that out? How can we help you? So like really leveraging those skill sets and recognizing that they bring a skill set that the client facing team might not actually have.
Yes, very much so, especially our operations team that took a little bit of a marketing bend. Those are really creative folks who do a great job at making our firm look good and making our firm sound interesting. Not everybody's going to go out on Facebook and make a post, but we have people that are creative and enjoy that. So we let them do that. And, that makes that employee happier. They feel much more valued. I think we used to have that separation where people viewed operations as, and I think the term we actually used, which drove me nuts, was that we would say or the administrative staff and the professional staff. And, that assumption that they weren't professionals, that is far gone. And this one firm and embracing operations definitely took that away.
Oh, I love that. Yes. And we say client facing at Convergence Coaching. It's hard though, because the profession keeps saying professional staff, and it's in the benchmark surveys, like it's everywhere. But we definitely encourage our firms to think differently about that. So you said something interesting, because you said not everything's really works to be centralized. And what were some of those things that you decided should live inside the offices?
We decided the client service really needs to live in the office. We can back each other up, we can help each other, but when it comes to the client relationships, the person who's in that office really knows the most. So something as simple as if a client calls, if the operations person in Plymouth, which is where I happen to be sitting today, if she can't take the phone call, I do want someone else on the operations team to answer the call. But you don't necessarily need to hit that client with questions. Don't make them re-explain themselves. You can transfer that voicemail to an operations person, but at least the client's being heard. So that was one thing I think we pushed a little too far, that we had to pull back in, because the clients were feeling like I'm always repeating myself. Now I'm talking to somebody else, and we don't want them to feel that way. We don't want somebody to feel like a number. When they call, I want you to feel at home and like we know who you are. So that was definitely, I would say, the main thing we realized we needed to somewhat keep in the office.
Sure. Interesting. Okay. So like this one firm idea and this one firm operations, I think you talked about the benefits. I mean, were there any other benefits that were realized over the years that you would want to share with our audience? You talked about centralization, about being able to cover for one another, having a consistent approach.
Yeah, I think it's that consistent approach that is honestly the biggest benefit, because it's not only internal but external. Some of our offices are relatively close to each other, or we have clients that may go to one office versus another, and they can walk into our offices and feel exactly the same. One thing that came out of our one firm was also a branding initiative, which I think, Renee, you were maybe in on that when we started doing this as well. And it was a different look, different colors. Our offices all look the same. Our meeting rooms look the same. We use the same software. So the staff just gets better and better because you're the same. And the clients just keep getting better and better service no matter where they're at. So, that consistency was just key, internal and external.
I love that. Yeah. And you also rebranded, right? I mean, was that at that time that you took a new name?
We did, yeah. We were known as Huberty for about 40 years, 41 years, I believe, and we just rebranded to Vesta last year.
Mhm.
And it was about time that, we had everybody felt different and our firm was different, that we wanted to be different externally. So that was really our last step in one firm.
Very cool. So, what about like if you think about our audience and they're listening to this and they're interested in some of this, and they're probably like, if they were sitting here with you, they would say, "Okay, I heard all the benefits, but tell me what you would do differently next time." Like, what were some of the pitfalls along the way, challenges that you experienced?
Definitely patience. Um, Hearing everyone when you're looking to be consistent, people have a lot of pride in what they do. And telling somebody that they're going to do something differently, there's feels in that. You don't want somebody to think they're doing something wrong. We just want to be consistent. So the patience it took to get there, it didn't feel like it was moving fast at the time, but now I can look back and everything we've done in 5 years is just a little bit mind blowing. But if I could go back, I would say be more patient. It takes time to change the way your firm operates. From start to finish, it impacts every department. And while a lot of these changes or everything we're talking about is in operations, our operations team touches everything. Tax, assurance, wealth, advisory, and you have to understand how those things impact all the other services, and be sure that you're not, dropping a ball when it comes to any other service.
Sure. When you say patience, I also think compassion, like
Mhm.
understanding, empathy.
Yes, we had a lot of our offices were operating independently for 10 plus years. So to tell somebody that was doing something one way for 10 years, we're going to do it a new way, that's hard. And even if you can show a benefit in it, not everybody buys into that. And it does take a while. But like I said, we had a really great team of ladies. I shouldn't say had, we still do. We have a great team of ladies that they love change and they love making things better and being more efficient and seeing what else they can learn. One thing we actually recently moved inside operations is annual reports, and our operations team now does some sales tax. So we started poking into this. What can we do that you don't need a CPA to do? And we have the capacity to do it. And those two things, like I said, we just started. So we'll see where that takes us.
Staci, I remember talking to you at some point as this was really starting to get momentum and that capacity was being created, and also the calm that had sort of unfolded over the peak period. I can't remember which one it was, if it was spring or fall, but ordinarily there was a lot of chaos and uncertainty, and it was like it was under control. And
I
how
would get the
exciting that was for you.
It was I think that was two tax seasons ago. We came into deadline day and it was like, "Huh, it's a deadline." I mean, we were done by noon and we're having a great time celebrating everybody's success. And it was very clear that if we operate as one, we succeed as one, we celebrate as one, we help each other out. The operations team is the last step on a deadline day when we talk about e-filing. But I remember that particular year we had some senior tax managers who came up and, can I help you guys e-file? Sure. So I mean, we had such a fun deadline, and the fact that you don't dread February, March, and April, you look forward to it and you look forward to the fun, the little bit of adrenaline of it. That's great. And, every year we just keep getting better at it. So,
Yeah, the distinction is for our audience is probably proactive versus reactive.
oh,
Yeah, that you
definitely.
have become a proactive team and a proactive operations function, and even like maybe a proactive firm, we could say, which opens up all these possibilities for
Right.
where you can put that proactive time.
Yeah, and we've, again, going back to technology, we're able to schedule work coming in the door. We can anticipate this year versus last year when we're going to get hit with a lot of work, how we can spread that out. Uh, you know, Weeks coming into a deadline, we know if we're doing good or if we have to push. And it's all through leveraging, your data to make sure you can assess where you're at. And again, being proactive.
Yeah, I love it. Very exciting. So lots of potential here for our audience to kind of think about where are they not operating as one firm. From an operations perspective. And then, of course, that's a broader thing, audience, and maybe HR and operations, we touch it more on the people side, on the operations side, but it's also something that impacts the whole firm. And so sort of dreaming about what would that look like if we were more consistent, more on the same page, more operating as one firm. So Staci, thanks for painting that picture for us today on the operations side. It's been really interesting to hear you talk about it. I know our audience appreciates it. So thank you so much for your time and for being with us here today. And we appreciate you, audience, for being with us as well. And you know how to get in touch with us if you have questions, thoughts, comments, ideas for a future HR Huddle. Please place them in the chat. And we hope to see you next time. Next week, we'll be on the air. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Staci.